Hi, I'm Mark Richmond from Chef Knives To Go. Today I want to talk about straightness, and this is something I get fairly frequently. Usually, I would say probably maybe once a week. A customer will get their knife, or they'll have used their knife for a little while, and they'll contact me and say, "Hi, Mark, I got my knife. It's not straight." And most of the time they add that they check for straightness by doing this. They laid it on a flat counter and noticed that part of the edge on one side up near the tip is up off the counter, and then they flip it over, and then they find that the other side is laying flat on the counter, and there's a tiny difference between them. Oftentimes they'll tell me that they didn't notice it at first, and so on and so forth. So this is a subject that is a little complicated, and it's hard to kind of figure this out if you're just new to knives and you're wondering why your knife wobbles on one side when you lay it on the counter. But I'm going to try and explain this and then give you a better test for straightness. You definitely want a straight edge, obviously. The way these are made, typically, like this particular knife I just grabbed off the shelf, it's the Kohetsu Blue No. 2 Nishiji. They take a bar of steel and then they hammer it flat. And in this case, these guys will then stamp out the pattern. And then they take it and they put it on a big grinding wheel, and they stick it on the back of a board, basically, with a couple nails in it to hold it. And they run it along that big rotating wheel. And what they're doing is they're trying to grind this down from the top thick part to the thin part in a convex way. So basically they're trying to, and they do a good job of this, they make a rounded convex grind from the spine all the way down to the edge. Then they flip it over and they do the same thing. They also take and taper this knife and do the same thing. They try to convex it down toward the tip, so it's much thicker here than it is here. So the thickest part of the knife is right here. And what this is called distal taper. And this is the magic behind making a good cutting knife for kitchen. If you were to use a flat piece of steel like this, this is nice and flat. It's actually pretty thin. You could put an edge on this and cut with it. But the thing is, if there is no roundness to the face of the blade, you will cut through on your edge, and then it'll basically drag through the rest of the face of the blade here as it tries, because the food sticks to it. So the convexing allows the food to peel away from that rounded blade, and that makes it cut so much better. And the guys that are good at this can make even a thick blade cut really well because of this feature. So back to straightness. The reason why this is a bad test, and let's just do this. This is my flat table that I made myself, and if I press on this, I notice there's no noise. It's not wobbling. Back here it wobbles, right? And the reason why is it's curved. The blade is curved over here. But up toward the tip, it's actually facing down on this. So then I'll flip it over. And you can hear, and it's too hard to see, but you can hear that there's noise coming out of that. And that's because it's wobbling, it's off the table and it's wobbling. This knife, I looked at this for a few minutes before I started the video. This knife is dead straight. So why is it that this tip is higher on this side than it is on the other side? And the reason is because of the convex grind. This knife has ground a little bit more on one side than the other. even though the edge is straight. So you get a little air pocket on the one side and not on the other. The way to test, the way I test a knife for straightness is the only thing that really matters is the edge. All the rest is going to be curves all over this blade, but the edge really needs to be straight. And you can, I did a video a few years ago about how to straighten a knife, but this is how you test for straightness. I took a piece of paper here, used my ruler, drew a straight line, and then I lay this down, edge down, right on the line. And if it follows the line, it is straight, and this knife is straight. It's not an ideal test because you have to rock the knife up to the tip. And obviously you can follow that edge if you want. So you have to kind of resist the temptation to follow the edge. Just lift it straight up and then watch and see if it deviates from the line. As far as the back of the knife is concerned, if it is bent, you'll know really quite easily because there's not a belly to it on the back. It's usually fairly flat. So you can put the whole edge down. But that'll give you a good indication that it's pretty straight and good to go. The other test I do as a follow-up is I gun sight the edge, and I just tip it up like this, and then I look at it like you're looking through a scope of a gun, and you just look down the edge and then twist it just a little bit back and forth so that you can look down each side of the edge, and then just look to see if it deviates, if it looks crooked. You can usually see bends, and it'll, if you do it from the heel, you'll lose the sight probably about here. So it's a good idea. Flip it over, be careful. You don't want to poke yourself in the eye, and gun sight it again the other way. It's a little more difficult to see down here, but that'll give you a good indication if something is wrong with your blade, that you can determine it without this kind of bogus test. Okay, so I'm Mark Richmond. Stay sharp.